This episode went to considerable lengths to make it seem more like a piece of found footage as opposed to an episode of Doctor Who. For example, there weren't any opening titles, all of it was shot through select character perspectives, and there weren't any direction or production credits until the end of the episode. These are prime example techniques of a subgenre Doctor Who has never really tested, and I'm glad the producers of this show gave the episode a green light. I'm not entirely sure if this episode was pandering to a section of the crowd that want more horror elements implemented into the show, or if it was a genuine experiment to see how this kind of technique would play out. My review should hopefully identify if this episode did achieve either goal successfully, as well as it being the standard weekly chatter from a man who likes tearing his once favourite show to pieces for your entertainment. So a man is compiling a video together from what happened on a base orbiting Neptune to scare people. I think this is quite interesting because for the first time in a found footage piece, we see the editor of the video before our very eyes. Normally the footage is edited by some unknown identity, which is one of the elements to found footage that I really like. I'm not too sure what my feelings are about this guy being shown now and then, but it certainly drags up a problem with this character because he has plot immunity until the end. He cuts away rather jaggedly to this image here, where the crew members' names are placed with the Doctor's name placed vertically in there like a word search, which is very interesting considering we would normally have the opening title sequence played here. The sound that plays behind it is harsh and static-like, really disorienting the viewer and completely throwing my expectations on the ground and stamping on them. We are introduced to the rescue mission members who didn't seem to really have much character to any of them except the leader and the guy who disagreed with living without sleep. If I've learned anything from found footage films, it's that nobody survives. Ever. Wreck, Paranormal Activity, Cloverfield, there's never a happy ending. The characters therefore don't have enough time for me to bother caring about them or remembering them because they're going to die. None of them die in spectacular ways either, nor do they get enough development for me to care about their deaths. The Doctor and Clara find themselves on board the craft whilst discussing space restaurants. There's a part here that killed my engagement slightly when the soldiers shine a light on the wall in front of our protagonists, yet didn't turn around until they hear the soldiers' guns clock. They discover where they are, and it appears that despite being in the 38th century, they still have concepts of religion and militaries. Quite the depressing prediction, but I think that does kind of make sense. Humans will probably always be terrified of death, and both have solutions by convincing you death is not the end, and the military will protect you from things that might want to kill you, respectively. I won't delve into how these shouldn't exist in over 1,000 years' time, because that's not my task here. I'm here to tell you whether I thought Doctor Who sucked or not. The first mucus monster comes along and they try to bar the door. Before we get to that, I thought I'd mention the sound design in this episode was pretty good. I don't know if there was any music composed for this episode, but if there was, it did a good job at creating an atmosphere along with the occasional effects, whirs and bumps. As they try to get in contact with Deep Endo, Clara opens a pod and conveniently nobody sees her enter the pod. Not even the Doctor, who is standing right bloody next to her and doesn't do anything or say anything or is even aware of her being pulled in by those blue things. Jesus, if this doesn't prove Doctor Who's budget, I don't know what does. Why did they look away as this was happening? Was there something more interesting you'd rather look at? The fact that they couldn't be bothered to animate these cables pulling her in concerns me a little. Like, I know found footage as horror comes from what you don't see, but when it's so glaringly obvious like this, it cannot be exempt from criticism. The Mr. Sandman song then plays rather fittingly with the plot, but isn't it odd that over 1,000 years into the future they're still listening to Mr. Sandman? No futuristic music that somebody could have composed? No? Was it Murray Gold's day off this week?
It's okay, we're not gonna hurt you.
Says the woman who's allied with 3 people pointing guns at the bleeding thing. Very reassuring, Clara, yes. She starts getting very patronising, like she's talking to one of her school kids, and a man's head pops out very comedically. Unfortunately, this man's way of explaining what's going on around here is by showing another floating golden face. Why? It looks so shit. But at the same time, it kind of fits. This, in my opinion, is a kind of mockery of stupid corporate adverts. This can be seen through the patronising voice and the terms and conditions apply part. The floating face in the clouds in The Girl Who Died was supposed to make us fear the Maya and failed miserably. This face serves its purpose well. Just a shame it looks really tacky. Regarding the main subject matter of the episode, I personally think that a life without sleeping would be great if it worked and didn't turn us into mucus monsters. Unfortunately, the episode episode shows this idea in a negative light. Like, I know a lot of people enjoy sleeping, but I really hate being tired. It ruins my mood and motivation for doing anything. Surely, if the technology worked, hypothetically speaking, it could have major advantages in your life. Like the woman says, you spend a third of your life sleeping. That time is given back to you to do all the things you want to do. When I say negative light, all it seems to acknowledge is that adults can work longer hours without mentioning all of the other advantages. One of the negatives of this system I really appreciated, though, is that the dust can be used as a camera and can be used in a horrible dystopian 1984-like system where everybody is watched through each other. I've already listed a few advantages already, and I'll debate it in the comments with you guys if you like. Let me know what you think of a life without sleep. The Doctor claims to sleep when Clara's not looking, yet Clara fails to understand that she's not always with the Doctor, and the Doctor is a time traveller. He could rest up and then walk back to you a second later. You'd have thought somebody that's been with the Doctor for nearly 3 years now would understand this. The Doctor claims that the monsters are made out of sleep, the horrible stuff you have to wipe away upon waking up in the morning. It doesn't make a whole bunch of sense logically, but I'm gonna roll with it because I like the ideas brought up regarding the lack of sleep they have on this planet. A contamination outbreak from a failed science experiment? Count me in. Stock character with no development number 1 then comes along and can't open a door. This scene was quite dull to me because I knew he was going to kick the bucket, and this computer with voice recognition doesn't seem to interest me either because it just asks him to sing the Mr. Sandman song. Is this supposed to be humorous? I don't get the purpose of this scene other than to establish the bad guys by showing they'll happily kill anything they see. He dies, so thankfully we won't be seeing any more of this nonsense with the computer for the rest of the episode. The gravity shields start and one of the monsters breaks into the room before the Doctor can conveniently save them all. The monster's design is interesting but nothing impressive. The giant mouth reminds me of those horrible monsters from the video game Amnesia, and the texture reminds me of the Flood from Halo. I reckon if those two creatures had a baby, it would look like what we saw on tonight's episode of Doctor Who. The Doctor starts quoting Macbeth, which is really weird considering I'm stage managing a production of Macbeth at my university at the moment, and I see where this episode got its title. At this point, I think I'll talk about performances. They were all dull. Even Capaldi in this one, which is really sad considering what he was given last week to sink his teeth into. Next topic? Oh yeah, that pod that passes by sometimes. I don't know what it is about pods and such in this series. We first had the one holding the Doctor and the Fisher King in Under the Lake, then we had that little Zygon pod that held Clara last week. Can Moffat just not get enough of pods? We discover the soldiers don't have helmet cams and 474 knocks out his friend carrying him to safety. The most hilarious part of that is though, from what I can tell, 47 just walked through a bit of fire, dropped the dude onto the floor, and decided to just give up. Why couldn't we see some of the conflict between 474 and the monsters before this shot? You can say budget, that's a perfectly reasonable answer, but because the shot's not in there, I'm left to assume the fire hurt him, despite he could have just walked over it. He then becomes the world's worst martyr and decides to run straight into the monsters instead of shooting them. Can I make it any clearer? The episode's characters were fucking trash. The Doctor then says that each dust particle is watching the Doctor and his friends from wherever it may be, which now basically means the camera crew can shoot wherever the hell they want because the dust is literally everywhere. This is no longer found footage, guys. You can go home now. Sorry to disappoint you all. One part that I really liked about this scene though was when Clara looked at the screen and the Doctor seemed to go on infinitely within it, when really this is what happens when you point your webcam at a screen of yours whilst on video call. Futuristic Nunu then passes across the screen again and we reunite with Weird Glasses Guy. Oh yeah, by the way, the other guy died too. Nope, didn't think you'd care. Anyway, Patient Zero opens up and it just turns out to be the same creature as every other one. How boring and anticlimactic. The Doctor starts figuring it all out but doesn't get enough screen time to complete the brain process. The episode concludes with the glasses dude peeling off his face and claiming that the whole video was just made purely for entertainment purposes. Am I missing something here? The whole episode was just for nothing? But I have questions. Ah, wait. That is the nature of the found footage video. When it ends, we end. Unknown resolutions never get resolved. Or Mark Gatiss was just too lazy to think of a decent ending. I certainly think the slow peeling away of his face was creepy and well animated though, as well as it resolving how he consistently survived his deaths. So, did it suck? I'm a bit on the fence at the moment. and I doubt I'll ever come down from it, if I'm honest. I'm going to give this episode a 5.5 out of 10 because I think it has great ideas with a crap execution. I wasn't really sure where the episode was going with this found footage idea because the episode wasn't really scary. The characters and performances were dull, but I certainly think that reaching in different directions certainly needs to be seen more on this show, as well as some of the social commentary going on to keep the episode interesting. Normally the footage is edited by some unknown editor. Fucking hell. We are introduced to this rescue meme. If I've learned one thing from found footage films I've seen is that oh my god, what have I written here? This can be seen through the patronising voice and the floating part. I've already listed a few of the doctor claims to sleep when Clara's not yucking. What kind of a word is that? This scene was quite dull to me because I knew he was going to kick the bucket. This one's design looks the worst though. It looks like Nunu from the Teletubbies.